There exists a gospel so quietly powerful, so spiritually subversive, that the most powerful institution in Christian history has spent centuries ensuring you never hear of it. A text not burned or denounced outright, but buried, ignored, and whispered about in the shadows of monasteries and councils. It is called the Gospel of Mary. Not Mary, the mother of Jesus, but Mary Magdalene, the enigmatic woman whom the Church labeled a harlot, but whom hidden scrolls portray as a spiritual master, a mystic of the highest order, and perhaps something even more profound. Why would the Vatican fear a single gospel, especially one left out of the canon? What truth lies within its fragmented pages that could shake the very foundations of Christian doctrine? Is it merely a text of alternative theology, or is it a key to unlocking a deeper, more ancient mystery of the soul? What if the Gospel of Mary doesn't just challenge church authority? It unearths the sacred feminine suppressed by centuries of patriarchy. What if it teaches not salvation through external worship, but liberation through inner gnosis, an awakened understanding of self, spirit, and cosmos that renders institutional mediation obsolete? In this video, we'll journey beyond the veil of history to explore why the Gospel of Mary was silenced, and what that silence reveals. We'll unravel the symbolic threads hidden in its verses, decode the Gnostic principles it contains, and confront the real reason religious authorities have long feared its wisdom. This is not a tale of dusty manuscripts and scholarly debates. It is a story of power, of mysticism, and of a forgotten woman who dared to speak the unspeakable truth, that the divine spark dwells within, not in temples built by men. If you're ready to see beyond dogma and reclaim a piece of the spiritual puzzle long kept from your hands, then follow me into the sacred labyrinth of one of the most enigmatic texts ever unearthed. To understand why the Gospel of Mary strikes such a deep chord, and why the Vatican has reason to fear it, we must first journey back nearly 2,000 years to a time when Christianity was not yet an empire, but a fragile mosaic of mystical teachings, underground gatherings, and spiritual rebels. The Gospel of Mary was not found in the Bible, nor was it meant to be. It belongs to a family of texts known as the Gnostic scriptures, esoteric writings that emerged in the early centuries after Christ, offering radically different perspectives on his message. These texts, hidden away in the sands of Egypt and buried beneath centuries of silence, speak not of sin and guilt, but of self-knowledge and divine awakening. Among them, the Gospel of Mary stands out, not just for what it says, but for who says it. Discovered in fragments in the Berlin Codex in 1896, the Gospel of Mary presents Mary Magdalene not as a mere witness, but as a teacher of secret wisdom, a spiritual confidant of Jesus who grasped teachings the other disciples could not. In her Gospel, salvation comes not through blind obedience or church rituals, but through inner gnosis, the experiential knowing of divine truth. She speaks of the soul's ascent through the realms of illusion, of inner struggle against the forces of ignorance and fear, and of the sacred path toward ultimate peace. But this vision directly threatens the foundational structure of institutional religion. The early church, solidifying its authority under Roman influence, required external control, hierarchy, rules, and obedience. A gospel that claimed spiritual liberation could be achieved without priest or sacrament was revolutionary, even dangerous. More so, the idea that a woman held the deepest knowledge challenged the patriarchal order the Church would soon enshrine. Philosophically, the Gospel of Mary is rooted in Gnosticism, a tradition older than Christianity itself. Gnostics believed that the material world was a realm of illusion, and that true reality lay beyond, in the hidden fullness of the divine. They viewed Jesus not merely as a savior, but as a revealer, one who came to awaken humanity to its forgotten origin. In this view, Mary Magdalene was not simply a follower, but one who understood, a true initiate. So why has this gospel remained on the fringes, quietly omitted from every major council, canon, and creed? Because its teachings are not just spiritually liberating, they are institutionally explosive. It replaces dependence with sovereignty, fear with wisdom, and patriarchal dogma with sacred feminine insight. To grasp the full depth of the Gospel of Mary, we must abandon conventional theology and step into the mystical terrain of the soul's journey. Unlike the canonical Gospels, which center around historical events and moral codes, Mary's Gospel is an inward map, a metaphysical guide to awakening. It begins where most religious texts end, within. The Gospel opens with Jesus speaking not of commandments or doctrines, but of the nature of reality itself. He urges his disciples to seek the inner man, to pierce through the veil of appearances and recognize the divine source within. After his departure, the disciples are consumed by fear and doubt. But it is Mary who rises with clarity. It is she who comforts the others, and more importantly, she who shares teachings Jesus revealed to her in secret, teachings the others were not ready to receive. Here, Mary recounts the soul's ascent through the 7 powers of darkness, archetypal forces that bind human consciousness to suffering: ignorance, desire, wrath, darkness, craving for false peace, judgment, and the compulsion of the flesh. These are not merely sins in the traditional sense, but illusions, layers of distortion that obscure the soul's true essence. Mary describes how the soul must confront and transcend each of these powers to return to the fullness of the divine. This, she explains, is liberation, not earned by rituals or dogma, but by inner transformation. What makes this so radical is the cosmology it implies: that heaven is not a place but a state of being, that God is not distant but inherent in our very nature, that salvation is not an external transaction but an inward awakening. And then comes the fracture. Peter and some of the male disciples resist her. They question how Jesus could possibly have entrusted such profound knowledge to a woman. This moment is pivotal. It reveals not just the tension between Mary and the male apostles, but the broader rift between mystical gnosis and hierarchical orthodoxy. Peter represents structure, law, and institutional control. Mary embodies insight, intuition, and spiritual freedom. This was not just a disagreement between followers. It was a fork in the spiritual road, one that would shape the future of Christianity. Over time, Peter's path would triumph, leading to creeds, councils, and cathedrals. Mary's path would be buried, first metaphorically, then literally. Her gospel disappeared for nearly 2 millennia. Her name became synonymous not with wisdom, but with sin. The feminine voice of spiritual knowledge was silenced, but not erased. Today, as consciousness shifts and the thirst for direct experience grows, the Gospel of Mary resurfaces, not just as a lost text, but as a mirror that reflects our own forgotten divinity. It invites us to question not just what we believe, but why. To ask whether the keys to heaven were ever meant to be held by institutions, or if they've been within us all along. To understand why the Vatican fears the Gospel of Mary, we must delve beyond theological disputes and into the very architecture of power, both spiritual and institutional. The Gospel of Mary does more than present alternative teachings. It dismantles the foundation upon which ecclesiastical authority was built. In Mary's account, salvation is not mediated through priests, sacraments, or a church hierarchy. Instead, it is found through direct inner knowledge, gnosis, and personal transformation. There is no concept of original sin, no need for a crucified Savior to atone for inherited guilt. The soul, according to Mary, was never truly separated from the divine. It merely forgot its origin. This is a seismic contradiction to the Church's teachings. If the soul is inherently divine, and its journey is inward, then what becomes of the towering edifice of confessionals, rituals, and doctrines? If Mary is right, then spiritual authority does not reside in Rome, in robes, or in rituals. It resides in you. That idea threatens more than dogma. It threatens control. But the threat doesn't stop there. Mary's gospel reawakens something even older than Christianity, the sacred feminine. The Church, shaped by Roman patriarchy, relegated women to the margins, permitted to serve, but never to speak from the inner sanctum. Yet here is Mary, not as a repentant prostitute, but as a revealer of truth. She is the one Jesus trusted with esoteric wisdom. She is the one who sees beyond fear when the male disciples falter. The Gospel of Mary doesn't just elevate a woman, it restores the divine feminine to its rightful place in the cosmic balance. It speaks of intuition, receptivity, and inner knowing as sacred paths to enlightenment. And it reintroduces the possibility that the masculine and feminine are meant to dance together in harmony, not one dominating the other, but both illuminating the path. This is perhaps the most subversive truth of all. The Gospel of Mary reclaims the lost half of the human soul. And history shows us what happens to dangerous truths. By the 2nd century, Gnostic texts were being condemned as heresy. By the 4th, under Emperor Constantine, the Roman Church consolidated its power through political alliances and theological conformity. Councils were held. Scriptures were chosen. Others, like the Gospel of Mary, were cast into the shadows, declared apocryphal, and hunted into obscurity. But why such fear? Because those who control the story control the soul. The Gospel of Mary doesn't just challenge one belief, it challenges the entire scaffolding of religious control. It invites people to awaken rather than obey, to seek within rather than submit without. It reveals that heaven is not a future promise, but a present state of consciousness. And that, perhaps, is the real reason the Vatican fears this gospel. Not because it is false, but because it sets people free. Now that we've peeled back the veils hiding the Gospel of Mary, the question becomes, how can you, the seeker, live what was once forbidden? This isn't about becoming a rebel for rebellion's sake. It's about reclaiming the forgotten temple within you. The Gospel of Mary is not merely a text, it is a map, a guide back to your original state of wholeness, where fear dissolves and inner knowing becomes your compass. To embody this wisdom, you must begin with silence. Not just the absence of sound, but the stillness in which your inner voice can rise. Mary teaches that true knowledge does not come from external teachers, but from within. Begin each day with 5 minutes of deep, conscious stillness. Let your thoughts pass like clouds. Don't chase them. Listen instead to the space between. In that space, intuition stirs. Second, question inherited guilt. According to Mary, the soul was never tainted by original sin. It is eternal, luminous, and connected to the divine. Reflect on the ways shame has shaped your decisions, relationships, or spirituality. Begin to dissolve those patterns by reminding yourself daily, I am not broken. I am becoming. Third, engage in sacred journaling. Not as a chore, but as communion with your inner self. Ask questions in your journal like, what am I truly afraid of? What truth have I been denying? What would it look like to live from my soul, not my wounds? Don't seek perfect answers, seek honesty. Fourth, explore the sacred feminine, regardless of your gender. This is not about femininity in the cultural sense, but about reconnecting with the intuitive, receptive, nurturing energies within you. That might mean walking barefoot on the earth, creating something with your hands, honoring your dreams, trusting your inner timing rather than external pressure. The Gospel of Mary invites balance, not domination. And finally, live your truth, quietly but unwaveringly. You do not need to scream it, prove it, or convert anyone. The Gospel of Mary calls you to become a living gospel, a sacred text in motion. When you live with courage, clarity, and compassion, you become a mirror that reflects the divine in others. That is how transformation spreads, not by force, but by presence. Remember this. No institution can contain the soul's light once it remembers itself. Mary's words were hidden, not because they were weak, but because they were powerful beyond measure. Let them awaken something ancient in you, something bold, something free. The gate is open. The voice is whispering again. Will you listen? In a world that often trades truth for tradition and revelation for repetition, the Gospel of Mary stands as a quiet revolution, a whisper from the past carrying the thunder of awakening. What you've just explored isn't merely an ancient controversy or a forgotten manuscript. It's a mirror reflecting a timeless question. Who holds the key to your salvation? You or the system built to define you? Mary's gospel dismantles the scaffolding of fear. It gently but firmly tears down the illusion that we are broken, stained, and in need of external permission to know the divine. Instead, it offers a radical alternative, that the divine is already within you, that the answers you seek are not hidden in cathedrals or cloisters, but encoded in your own soul. The Vatican's fear, then, is not about a woman's voice alone, but about a deeper, more dangerous truth, that spirituality without hierarchy is power without control. And now, this truth is in your hands. You've heard the voice of Mary, not the caricatured Magdalene of dogma, but the true teacher of inner gnosis. The question is, what will you do with it? Will you let her gospel be just another video, or will you let it be a seed? One that grows into self-knowing, courage, and divine sovereignty? The time for silent knowing has passed. The time to reclaim what was buried has come. Let this be your invitation to seek, to question, and to remember. The Gospel of Mary was never lost. It was waiting for you. If this awakens something in you, don't let it fade. Subscribe to the channel for more explorations of hidden wisdom and esoteric truth. Leave a comment. What did Mary's message stir in you? And share this with someone you feel is ready to hear what was once silenced. The light is returning, the veil is thinning, and the forgotten gospel has found its voice again. Welcome back, Seeker.